With great excitement, we're here today live in person for one of the few times I think I can remember since we got into this whole gambit with Clive Cooper. Welcome, Clive.
Thanks so much, Shane. Great to be here.
I've known Clive for a long, long time, about 20 odd years.
Yeah.
I remember him as a gangly young, as I was, wannabe athlete down in Mount Maunganui at New Year's, and I think 2000, 2001 with Nick Willetts, among others, other luminaries. And I remember having a conversation with Clive one day about whether he was going to pursue his dreams or delusions of grandeur along with mine with the athletics world, or whether he was going to go down the academic career route. And Clive's a really bright young guy, ducks at his school, I understand, and went off and pursued, I think wisely, the career route while taking good life lessons and enjoyment from sport. And did his was it undergrad at University of Massey, and then a postgrad over in University of Sydney. First job as an investment banker with the coveted Credit Suisse. And I thought, having seen on LinkedIn recently some of the stuff that Clive's got up to and accomplished at a very young age, he's now the global director of sales for a company called Released, and COVID has brought him back to New Zealand in what's quite a unique opportunity to sit down with him. So without further ado, I'll hand the reins over to Clive, because that's enough of me, and you get to see my mug on your screens every week, parroting out a whole lot of nonsensical legal jargon. So I will hand over to Clive and pour myself a Antipodes sparkling water.
Take
it away.
Shane, thanks so much for you and Lateral Lawyers for having me on today. It's I think I first got exposed to what you were doing here with some of the tenancy and the rental rebate schemes that you were doing at the start of COVID, and trying to look after your clients during that time. And there was just so much uncertainty in the market, and so what you were able to bring some clarity and speaking with lots of different sort of participants in the industry was really great. So nice to speak to everyone here. It's great to rekindle some of those old sporting memories and relationships. It's one of those things I do quite regularly. Is whatever city I'm in the world, there's typically someone from my sporting past who lives there, and everyone's from all different walks of life, but typically successful. If you've been able to commit yourself to a sport at a younger age, you can kind of continue that on, whether it be in your sporting endeavours or outside endeavours, and it really does set you up. It's one of those things you can go 15, 20 years without seeing each other, and then just go back into things as if you were long lost friends. So you were hanging around each other at races or sporting events last week. So awesome to be here, Shane. Thanks for the introduction. I think you mentioned young a couple of times. I'm not sure how young I am with this receding hairline. Plenty of years and stresses have gone through, but I've really enjoyed the end of my sporting career and then into my sort of professional career. As Shane mentioned, went to Massey University in Palmerston North undergrad. I'd seen some articles about the CFO of Adidas in Germany. Actually had his chartered accountancy and was a grad from Massey. And I'm like, that's the dream job for me. I love sport, love finance and accounting at the time. And so if it was good enough for him, it was good enough for me. So I went through Massey, did 3 years there. And an old high school teacher of mine had actually told me, never do your postgrad at the same university as your undergrad. Always go somewhere different. You might as well get a different perspective. And then secondly, always try and do your postgrad in a different country as your undergrad. So I kind of looked at that and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And because of the year in the UK and the US starting 9 months after you graduate from undergrad, Australia was the logical choice for me. And I ended up at Sydney University for a year and then lived in Sydney for 12 years preceding that. So it was a great time. Hopefully my accent hasn't turned too Aussie twang, but I might still say a few expressions that are very Australian related. And got into investment banking with Credit Suisse off the back of that. Banking's one of those roles that I think every graduate coming out of finance aspires to do. You hear the money, you hear the deals that you're working on, and that kind of similar to medicine and finance, that to me was the creme de la creme and what I wanted to do. Did that for a year and a half, and it was the former CEO of Credit Suisse, John Knox, who actually pulled me aside one day and he's like, Clive, what do you really want to do in your career? At the time, I think I just got back from the Asian Duathlon Championships where I got second or third, and straight back into an 80 or 90 hour week, or just run my 10K PB, 31:30 or something, and went straight back into the office after that. And just working long hours and trying to train, and something had to crack, right? I think I was trying to become a chartered accountant and a CFA at the same time. And so I took that moment to actually go and try and turn pro. Silly in a sport that pays no money, purely a lifestyle choice for me at the time. And went overseas, chased the duathlon dream. It's like being a triathlete back before triathlon was in the Olympics sort of thing. And a couple of injuries later decided, no, I had to get back into work. And fell into a company called Cap IQ. And these things kind of happen over your career, whereby a person, a relationship, a company you get exposed to sticks with you, and it rings and it resonates. And Cap IQ was actually a software, a database that I'd used when I was at Credit Suisse. And during some quiet period over the holidays, I kind of doubled down on the use of it. And I got to know the guys there. And when I was in New York on my global training program with Credit Suisse, I got to know some pretty senior folks in the company. And when they heard that I was racing and I'd left banking, they started hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. What are you doing? We're looking at opening up an office in Australia and Asia. Would you like to join us? So I said yes. 8 weeks training in New York. I met my wife on that trip. So that was a great trip to kind of be able to solidify lifelong kind of goals and achievements. And Amanda and I have two lovely girls, Emma and Chloe, which is fantastic. Awesome. And yeah, we kind of came back to Australia in a sales role. And I don't think I quite realized when I was on my 8 weeks in New York what a sales role was. I didn't know any salespeople. Sales wasn't really a profession. When I thought of sales, I was thinking used car salesman, insurance broker, that sort of thing, you know. And so I kind of landed, and the folks at Cap IQ were saying, like, you've just got a natural aptitude for speaking to people and getting them to listen to you, trust you. You're engaging, you listen attentively. You've got all the characteristics and skill sets that make a good sales rep. And I was there for 7.5 years. Wasn't easy going to start with. I think I signed my first deal 6 months in to a friend.
Why was it difficult?
We didn't have any brand presence. And I think that's a big thing that has been a factor, a contributing factor to my success in my career, is working for a company without a brand, whereby you're fighting the brand names that have a lot of recognition, that people think, I could never work with anything else because that's the industry standard. And for me, I've kind of built up myself as being the challenger, the smaller underdog.
How did you, because there'll be a lot of people listening today, and I can think of a couple of clients of ours off the top of my head, whether it's their first startup, their second, or maybe they've got established businesses, and through the anachronistic way that sales has evolved, particularly with social, how would you describe, how did you do it? How did you, as a salesperson without a strong brand behind you, what were some of the characteristics you needed to show? What do you need to learn? Obviously a lot of it is hanging in there and tenacity, but there must be some specific knowledge that you could share with the viewers as to what you did and what made you achieve where perhaps others didn't.
What I did then would be very different to what I do now.
Okay, let's go then.
Let's go then, because that did serve me well. And to be honest, a lot of those characteristics still serve you well now. It's just now there's more of a science, less of an art to it. It's method. Sales is very mathematically sort of driven now. Okay. And there's a lot of positive factors to that. There are some negative as well. So you got to kind of balance that. At the time, ex-banker, all of my friends from university in Sydney had all gone into banking, accounting, private equity, commercial banking, investment banking, etc. And so I felt like I had the dream job because all I was doing every day was messaging and hanging out with my friends. And I was basically just trying to make their jobs easier. So I had a little expression, bit of play on words. I'll allow you to go on a date on a Thursday night. Remembering investment bankers, you're typically working till midnight, quite often midweek. Or you can have a date on a Saturday or a Sunday because I can help you. You can play golf. You can kind of do these lifestyle things that you want to do. You can be made to look good in front of your bosses because I can help you do a lot of the core work that you might be having to spend a lot of time doing at that. So I kind of fell into, I can help people in their roles. And then I realized I could scale that up to how am I actually helping an organization? What are the pressures on an organization, right? Like getting a new client, increasing your number of fees, being able to do your projects quicker and more efficiently so you can take on more engagement or pitch for more work. So I really brought it down to what problem or issue am I trying to solve at a personal level and at a company level. And so you've got to differentiate. Your pitch to a managing director is very different to a pitch to a junior analyst, right? And so you've got to, sometimes it's good having them both in the same meeting, but you've actually got to chat to both of them separately outside of that conversation to really dig into what's driving them and how can you help them. So that was a big thing. That took a little bit of time to get there. Secondly, it's just enthralling yourself in that industry. So every conference that was on, when I was going to birthday parties on the weekend, everyone was in finance and they knew what I'd do and they just introduction here, introduction there. So that did serve me very well.
You're getting right into it.
Your whole life becomes that, right? And I think when you're a runner, it doesn't really matter what high school you went to, you're a runner first, and then where you go to for school, university was secondary. With work, it's definitely the same. It's what you do, and where you're based or anything else is secondary. So that really bode well, and just high activity, right? I'm a very social person, and I'd rather be, I read a book recently that resonated with my life called Never Eat Alone. Why would you have lunch, breakfast, or dinner on your own when you could be having a conversation with someone who might be able to help you in some meaningful way? Like you and I, we caught up last week. So you never know what comes up from those conversations. And we all spend half an hour having breakfast, half an hour having lunch, half an hour having dinner, especially on business travel, which most people in sales, we do a lot of in a non-COVID world, is trying to get those connections happening.
I think it's an interesting point that you just raised, because I spent my teens, my 20s, and most of my 30s. I just thought of David Brent at the office then when he's 39, because I'm 39, and they asked him, they went to say 30 something, and he interrupts before it gets to 9. He said 30s, 30s. So I'm in my 30s. And just about what you just said then, because you're naturally, I remember you as a young man, very introverted and and you must have spent a lot of time honing that attitude, because people who are bright, as I say to people, say, such and such is very bright, because they might be also termed as book smart, or scholastically they've achieved a lot, but that usually has to have been honed. As in other words, you have to have studied a lot, which means you must have been introverted at some point. So I've come at it the other way, where lately I've spent quite a lot more time doing my own thing, because I felt like I've just been surrounded by people ad nauseum my whole life. So that's quite interesting that I've gone the other way for a while. So I quite like to eat alone at the moment. I'm very happy with it. Whereas you've gone probably almost the other way. You've developed the skills, the intellect, you've got the accolades and on your CV, so to speak. Then you've gone out of what would have been perhaps almost telegraphed as quite a academic or grinding career into something which is, you've become very affable and use that brain to. So I just wonder, it's an interesting aside, whether there is no black and white. People are introverted, extroverted, but at the end of the day, I think we're all a mixture of both. And what do we enjoy doing the most? What are we most comfortable with? Because for me, it's a mix. Remember Jason Stewart? Remember our friend Jason Stewart's uncle was staying with us once back in the day when we lived together in Parnell, and he was an accountant, and he said, it's a great job being a lawyer. I was in my first year and I wasn't enjoying it. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, with accounting, all you do is meet the client briefly and then you're just in the books the whole time. He said, as a commercial lawyer, you meet the client, you have to do quite a bit of problem solving, you go to the books for a while, but then you have to go and engage and do meetings. So it's a lovely mix of the introvert and the extrovert. And it always stayed with me. And at times where it's got tough and I've not enjoyed it, or I've wanted to get out of it because of a particular situation or how I'm feeling, I've always remembered that, and it does suit me quite well. Like I like to put my head in stuff and draft and figure problems out, but I also love doing stuff like this. So I think you've probably got there through quite a not unusual, but quite an interesting, it's quite an interesting pathway.
It is.
Where you've got to.
On reflection, it's an incredible change to what I was doing when I was younger. Like, Excel modeling, spreadsheet, deep accounting standards. That was my world. No
wonder you got out of it.
My former colleagues from Credit Suisse may be laughing because I think they created every discounted cash flow model for me. I just took the benefits. They wanted me to get home before 3 o'clock in the morning. But it was, that was my world. And now it has completely changed where my skill set is very different. The organizations that I work for don't want me doing that. They want to use a different level from me, where I can be out attracting talent, upskilling the people within the organizations, and just being, I think the more senior you get, like when I speak to CEOs or founders or seniors within business, it's not so much the technical ability they've got, it's the team they've got around them and the pieces and the building blocks and how they put them in place. And I spend a lot of time within the private equity world, and a lot of my career mentors are still in private equity. And they're just phenomenal. While having a conversation, they'll just introduce me to 3 or 4 people that they think I might be able to help them and they may be able to help me. And they just think it's an alignment there. And I think that comes with time, that comes with seniority, but you've got to have an open mind to that. And you have to build trust.
Yes.
That's a big thing in COVID. And we can kind of get into what it's been like living in the US for the last 10 months. But it's so difficult to build real trust in a COVID world where you are 100% remote. And I talk outside of Australia and New Zealand here, where every meeting is via Zoom. And a lot of people I would try and have a coffee with, and I'm not trying to sell to them, but I'm trying to let them educate me. Hopefully I can give them some snippets of where we're going and where the industry is moving to. And I always like to think I add as much value to them as they add to me. I wouldn't sort of organize anything if that wasn't the case. But those meetings, I'm not organizing them right now because it's a Zoom call, they've got a busy day. You can't build that real personal rapport. Or it's not like I'm going to be in town, let's grab a breakfast, a lunch, or a drink after work while you're in town. So that's really slowed things down. So going back to kind of the sales, it's made it more, you've got to be more regimented to grow a business these days, and it needs to be programmatic. So at release, very timely, just in the last couple of weeks, for us, it's all about how do we build a scalable sales engine built on kind of repeatable excellence, where we know we can hire a new rep and set them up in a structure with parameters around them and educate them how to do certain skills and activities, and know that they're going to hit target and grow our business within that territory if they just do what we kind of prescribe. So for me, it's very different now. It's less about the science, the art, and more about the science. Is bringing that program knowing, you've got to make 100 calls per week, 100 emails per week. You've got to meet with 10, 15 people. And if you do that, you'll be generating 5 opportunities per week, which will get you to your number at the end. And that's what American SaaS businesses have just done so well. And it just kind of, there's some real hustle and rigor over there. And I just saw on Instagram.
So SaaS is software as a service?
Software as a service. Yeah. So SaaS, it's been around probably 10, 15 years as an expression.
Give us an example of a SaaS business.
Yeah, a SaaS business would be a Salesforce or LinkedIn. So basically, it's what is a service that you buy through software that helps your business or you as an individual. So most of the apps that you have on your phone, that would be software as a service. It's doing, rather than calling the bank manager and asking them for a balance, it's providing your bank balance on your phone. So anything that can be provided automatically in the cloud.
Gary Vee on a YouTube clip the other day was talking about how, so right now our grandparents look at, if they're we're lucky enough to have them still, look at an iPhone and probably think it looks like something that's fallen from Mars. But in 30 years' time, it will be a voice activated AI. So, and he said the reason for that, we'll just say, hey Alexa, tell me the next 5 rock indie concerts coming up in Auckland, and it will give you an answer. And he said the reason it's so good is it removes friction. So any type of inefficiency where there's no enjoyment in that inefficiency, and I was talking to the staff about it this morning for us and what we're trying to do with Lateral, and it's like, why do you like Uber Eats? Well, it probably cost you $2.80 in petrol to drive to go and pick up your pizza, and you have to fluff around and ring up, and you get someone who's not very, pleasant to deal with, they're rude. App, bang, done, $5 is there, right? So, software as a service is obviously a hugely growing, it's just massive, right? And like Xero for our thing, and we've got a thing called Action Step, which is amazing for our trust account and all of our internal CRM. So just that is where everything is going, isn't it? Removing that friction and making things easier for the end user.
It really is. It's also, creating a lot of risk mitigation in terms of losing documents or spreadsheets. So I was creating a wine list back when I was a lot 10 years ago. I just had it on an Excel spreadsheet. And then I had to, when I left Capital IQ, I remember emailing the Excel spreadsheet of all the wine I liked to my Hotmail address so I could have it. And then when I was moving to my next organization, I went to a winery. I'd have to go and find that document, add to it, and then save it down. And then I lost it. It's like, well, what happens? Now there's a wine app where every wine you like, you just, the vino, there's probably hundreds of them, right? Where you can now scan a bottle and it will tell you, what the wine is, where it's from, how much you should pay for it, how much you can buy it for online, and what the scorecard is from a Halliday or some wine expert, as well as what is the average rating from everyone. Yeah. So that's just a tiny little example of how life gets better.
Look at all our training you would have had with the paper diaries, as much as that was cool to collect. If we ever became any good, maybe they'd be collector's items. Unfortunately, we didn't. But yeah, that's the difference now between what they call it. I use it about every 2 months when I get you go for a run.
Strava training pizza. Yeah.
That's cool. Imagine back in the day having all that data.
We speak about connected cloud and how these cloud or software as a service platforms integrate with each other, right? So I go for a run. My run logs on my Garmin watch I've got here. That then goes to Strava, which gets shared with my network of individuals who they can see what I'm doing, so they can catch up with me or give me kudos or shit if I've gone too slow. And then you can then integrate that with training peaks or add photos, which then integrate with Instagram, and it's building a profile for you. And some of the intelligence behind those tools, no coach could ever record everything that's going there. With it now integrates with Womb, that's telling you your sleep patterns. How much deep sleep did you have last night? How much do you need? How is that on a benchmark compared to the best athlete, the average person? Life changes for the better, and life's getting faster, it's getting scarier, but you kind of need to be on these things, otherwise you're being left behind. Now, Strava's you don't need to be on Strava, but you do typically, Melissa's probably against this, but you do need to be recording things. And if you don't have someone who's with you at all times, it's very difficult to reflect back. And I remember I looked back at my 10K PB. What did I do in the 1 week, 1 month, 3 months prior to that race? What got me in peak shape? Yeah. So now in sales, I'm looking at our team. I'm like going, let's look back at our best ever quarter. Yeah. What do we do in the lead up to that? I'm all about pipe generation, and we talk about pipe gives you swagger. So pipeline, the amount of deals you're kind of bringing into the business. If you're a sales rep who's got lots of pipeline, you're walking around chest out. You know you're going to hit your number, no risk. If you haven't generated much pipeline, you're sitting there making some desperate cold calls with 3 days to go, hoping a Hail Mary closes. To be honest, I've been very fortunate not to have been in that pressure cooker situation. But I've been in environments where that is done, and I go along for the ride, and I actually thoroughly enjoy it. There's something about hustling hard. What I'd rather do is hustle hard continuously over time. So going back to SaaS and kind of how things work in America, SaaS was kind of born in the US. Big companies like Salesforce came out of there, and they built these big engines of sales reps, 10,000 sales reps, and they train them all really well. And in sales, there's quite a bit of churn where a sales rep might be with you for 18 months, 24 months, and then leave and go on to the next thing. And so all those reps leave and go somewhere else. They start their own little thing, industry best practice. They scale and grow. So over time, America has just become this juggernaut of SaaS best practice, in the same way that you look at the All Blacks in New Zealand. And how do the All Blacks in New Zealand rugby always remain on top? The same thing, the same founding principles is that the best are there, they strive to be better, and then they hand that down to the younger generation who do the same thing, rinse and repeat. And they're just getting better and better and better at their craft. So in SaaS, America is that. And then you've got the success stories of so many companies that have listed, and employee share option plans have got better. So I was looking at Instagram the other day, friends of mine were...
That's the wraparound, right? You talked about the All Blacks filtering through all the know-how and the example, leading by example and all technical knowledge and all that. Then obviously you wrap the brand and all that around it. That's the fold around, isn't it? The share schemes. I was really looking into that the other day, advising a client, and found some great stuff out of the US. And it's interesting from our point of view as commercial lawyers, having a discussion with a friend who actually called me for some advice for a bigger client, which I was quite flattered to be asked about. It's like a situation when you want to incentivize staff by giving them a share of the bottom line, so they know every day they come to work, it actually does matter how good a job they do. It's not the old routine of just going, okay, in a year's time, if I do well, I hope at my boss's discretion I'll get another 12K.
That's right.
Because he, felt, he liked me as a person, liked having me around, and I did okay. It's like, actually, we want to find a way of measuring the performance of the team, so that I know that in 12 months that if I do X, Y, and Z, and every day I turn up and matters, I'll get a lot more money. Or I might not if I just turn up and dick around every day. And that's a real interesting from a legal point of view, because while you want to incentivize them from a company's perspective in that way, you also don't want to give employees or certain employees an unfettered right to vote in terms of the mechanics of the company at board meetings, because if that person becomes problematic, you may have an issue when you get rid of them in terms of taking their shares back. And that's where we come in with, and this isn't a sales pitch, but while I've got there, I might as well get in there. Anyway. Things like turning off the voting rights of a shareholder, but also turning off the right of the director appointed by that shareholder to vote while they're in default. And anything requiring unanimous consent or special resolution of shareholders while they are held by the non-defaulting shareholders to be in default. They are all little traps for young players that you've given, with the best intentions, a really good, well-performing young employee a share in the profit, but they run into some sort of personal roadblock in their life and they go down a dead end, and you have to get rid of them. And you don't want to be left with a massive headache by way of them having control and voting rights in your business.
Indeed.
So are all the little nooks and crannies.
Yeah, and it depends on the industry, right? Like if you're in a very small business that is just a going concern operating business, you might want that for going concern purposes and continuity and engagement. In SaaS, it's slightly different, especially in software as a service businesses that are going global. Because we open up our release offices in the UK 4 to 5 years ago now. And at that point, we're a tiny business, right? Like really tiny business. But now you look at us and we've got 100 employees this month. And we've got goals of being over 200 employees in the next kind of 18 months, right? Yeah. So incredible growth. And with that, you want to be able to incentivize, but also you can't be giving away equity to every flashy person that you interview just to bring them into the organization. The thing on the employee share option plan is it's actually valued differently in different countries. So first thing to note, if you are an international business, is there's different tax laws. So when a option gets granted over a vesting period, typically these things vest over 4 years. So say you get X amount of options as part of an offer or due to your time, due to your performance in an organization, they might vest over 4 years. So a quarter will invest in 1 year's time, a quarter in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. When to actually gain the right of ownership of that option, you might have to pay tax to get access and own that right or that share at the end of the day before cashing it in, because you're waiting on a liquidity event at the end of it.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of stuff that needs to be scrutinized by your lawyers and your accountants to actually set up that employee share option scheme. But when you think about it from, you want it to have the right impact on your staff.
Yes.
You want every staff member to act as if they own the business. Yeah, as an owner, there's a lot of stresses on you, right? And so you want every member not to just turn up as a 9-to-5 job. There's some jobs where that's all you require and you pay accordingly. For others, you expect a lot more. And in sales, we really expect a lot more because you're kind of an entrepreneur without the risk. You've got unlimited upside. Yeah. You could hit 4 times number and the business is going to pay you a lot of money, but they've just given you the product to sell. They've given you the customers to sell to. It's up to you at that point. So in the US, options are valued really highly because a lot of people have made money on the stock market. A lot of people have made money through being early into Google, into Uber, into others. In countries like the UK, they're not. There hasn't been a massive track record of success of options. Therefore, they're not valued as highly in the psyche or the motivation of an employee.
Well, probably because there's not the proven example right in front of them.
Correct. And also your peers aren't doing it, right? So it's not spoken about over beers on a Friday or you don't chat to your buddy about how many options you got at what strike price. It's not a typical common, conversation in society. Whereas in the US and San Francisco, it most definitely is. And that's the reason why you get the Americans working so hard. I'm thoroughly enjoying living over there, Shane. And the reason being is, you get out what you put in. And a friend of mine on Instagram, in their holiday house in the Hamptons on the weekend, snow falling everywhere. 4 of them are inside Saturday noon, all on their laptops, all working. I just think about New Zealand society. Would we have a beach house, say?
There's a great...
And 4 people working on a weekend. I don't see that.
There's a great episode of Entourage where... What's the name of... It's been a while since I've watched it, but what's the name of... Oh, Turtle.
Okay.
So Turtle comes in...
I know the character.
Turtle comes in to see Ari Gold. He tells Ari Gold he's been musing for a while and he's been watching and he's decided he wants to be like Ari Gold. He wants to make something of himself. He's got that little gay assistant, Lloyd.
Yes.
And so Lloyd, is a legend, right? But Lloyd is quite far away from getting somewhere in New York terms. Anyway, he comes in one day and he talks to Ari and he says he wants to get somewhere. And Ari Gold says to him, essentially pulls him aside like this and takes him to this box of manuscripts. And he says, Lloyd here could recite every single word of every single one of these manuscripts. And I can't remember how the exact dialogue went, but it was along the lines of, and Lloyd is a long way from getting somewhere. And then, so if Lloyd is here, he goes, you are down here too. You have no idea what it takes. And to be honest, until a few years ago, till I got my life in order and really started working way harder, I had no idea too of how much effort it takes to get somewhere. And I had no real conception of how much more you can do than you are doing at any given time. Sure, you have to have enough sleep and rest and all that, but it's just a whole mentality thing. Like if I get stuff like way out of work time and I get stuff where, I on the weekend, someone, I thought he was a tire kicker and that conversation would end up to be the case. But I spent 40 minutes on the phone to him trying to sell to him because it was a $3,000 or $4,000 job, which is not a big job for us, but it will pay my rent for a month.
Yeah.
So it's that hustle and it's that constant engagement, knowing that if you do it over time, the exponential payoff from that effort and that focus, it's unbelievable. But if you don't and you just turn up and you do your job, you never really get somewhere. And that's a big fear of mine, to get to 50, which will be in 11 years. I think I've never really given it my all.
Yeah.
And I'll look back and I'll go, if only I had, when I had my chances, which I've got, if only I'd actually committed, all in to get after it, and that's, you don't want to look back when you're 50 or 60 or 70 and go, shit, if only I grasped those awesome chances I had in front of me, life could have been a lot more enjoyable.
And success breeds success with that regard. Like everyone knows the 80-20 rule, that 20% of your customers will bring in 80% of your revenue, or 20% of your work will give out 80% of your results. But you've got to be in the hunt to get the 20. If you're not in the hunt to get the 20, it's little things. Like if you just work 20% harder, make 20% more calls, 20% more deals, 20% more, it's not just 20% more. You're crossing the chasm. You're actually getting into a point where stuff starts coming to you and things start to become easier. Yeah. And we speak about it at release, when if someone responds in and just goes onto the release website wanting more information on commercial property software, I would hope a member of our team is on the phone to them within a couple of minutes max.
Yeah.
Reason being, if we can give you a call within 2 minutes and our competitors take 2 hours, we would have already done a discovery with you and worked out what your problems are and set you straight, whether it be us or someone else. We've started building that relationship and started answering those questions where we can really help you. Yeah. That is taking that opportunity away from the next person that you talk to.
100%.
So the more of those little wins you can get, the more, they say, typically to get a deal done, you might actually have to chase that deal 8 times. The issue is a sales rep will probably only chase the deal 2 to 3 times before giving up.
Yes.
And so if you keep on it, and I think about my 7.5 years at Cap IQ trying to sign all the private equity firms, investment banks, and corporate finance houses here in New Zealand, I was signing the likes of some of the biggest institutional firms in New Zealand in my 7th year. I contacted them on my first. I had coffee with them on my first trip to New Zealand when I was living in Australia, but it took 7 years to get there. Now, had I not started, we wouldn't have got there. Had I not persevered and continuously kept front of mind, we would never have got there.
Yeah.
So things become easier over time, provided you've got a rigor and a hustle. You always want to do that 10% more. Like I said, it's not your 10% more effort does not give you 10% more results. It's extremely more than that.
The other thing as well, Clive, I've found is that the biggest hump you have to get over is the initial decision to work harder, do more, and actually you absorb that energy into your day-to-day life. Once you've actually made that decision and you're committed to it and you get the ball rolling, you don't get any payoff in that interim period, that first week, month, maybe year. You don't. But once the habit's there, it actually just becomes the new normal in terms of your energy and output and your focus. And then once the results start coming in, you feel like you've won twice, because not only does it not feel like any real extra effort anymore, it doesn't take me any extra effort to take calls in the evening or to go and see somebody at their home or all of that stuff. It doesn't bother me at all because it's normal now. It used to be like, oh God. But then once all the deals start coming in and the money starts flowing in and you're growing the business, it's like, oh, this is just cool. This is a really cool confluence of circumstances that have come together that make you think, why the hell did I not do it earlier?
Yeah.
The truth, and there's all sorts of reasons why people don't do things at certain stages of their life. We won't go into those. It's maybe a next podcast when you're back in New Jersey. But like for me personally, it's just like it is so worth it. When you're ready, you get out there, put yourself out there, and you just never look back. Yeah.
For me, one of the big things I've implemented in my life over the last couple of years, Shane, is Sunday evening work sessions. And so it's the end of a weekend, you might be tired, but you've got a week ahead of you. And like I come into a week like this week, so much to do. I'm back to back with probably 12 meetings throughout today.
Yeah.
My first interview was a candidate at 5 a.m. while I'm driving up here to Auckland. He accepted an offer. I'm then on another interview. I think I had three or four interviews before 8 a.m. To do that and then come back to back into meetings, I need to have my week sorted. So last night was my opportunity through to like midnight to carve out, make sure my inbox was as close to empty as possible. I was sending requests for other people for actions that I could then bounce back off and achieve this week to tick off what I need to.
Yeah.
If that didn't get done last night, my week is shot as pushing everything a further week out, right? Yeah. Which in sales or wherever you are in life, it just takes longer. Yeah. And that's where that American psyche of like I was watching a documentary, a 12-part series of conquering America and like the different stages. And these people coming from the UK, they had nothing to lose. And then they conquered the West. And then once they got to the East Coast, they went west again over the Appalachians. Then they went east again into California. Massive trials and tribulations in doing that. Yeah. And just, I learned a lot about why certain things are so prevalent in American society that I kind of looked at them as an outsider thinking they were crazy. Yeah. When now it just makes complete sense. It's wired in their brain and passed on now down generation through generation about why it is one of the greatest countries in the world and why they're so successful. And there's so much we as New Zealanders can learn. Like probably wouldn't be taking much learning from them from how they've handled COVID. And I'm not going to get into American politics, but there are so many things we can learn by looking there. And I think that's probably one of America's biggest issues is they don't look outside their country as we look outside their country. Many SaaS businesses get to 300 or 400 employees before they put their first employee in the UK. New Zealand, we get to 10 employees. We're like, we're going to London. Let's take over the world. And that's what's great about America. What's great about New Zealand, right? Whereas America is the land of opportunity. And so they can grow a lot more internally.
And they do that with everything that they do. Yeah. And then that can be, like you said, a massively positive thing, but it can be hugely detrimental as well.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm rattling with right now is how New Zealand, you're banning checks. Is that a thing? Is New Zealand banning the use of checkbooks and payments via checks?
Yeah, like quite a few places I've been lately, it says no checks. And I think I was at ANZ withdrawing some cash the other day, and it said something along the lines of at the ATM machine, ANZ will no longer, as at 13th of March 2021, accept checks issued before X day. Yeah.
It's incredible. So there's an example where America and the rest of the world is so different. The rest of the world is trying to get rid of checks. And I lived in Sydney for 12 years, starting in 2006. Never owned a checkbook. Whereas in America, you need to pay my first bill. Oh, you need a check to make that payment. So it's just incredible, and that creates opportunity, right? It creates opportunity for different software as a service or different vendors or fintech institutions to take advantages of those slow, outdated processes. And that's where businesses such as Release, they're kind of looking at that as huge opportunities for growth in the US.
Cool. All right, mate. Great to have you on today.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, awesome. And good luck with the rest of your time here.
Thanks so much.
With Released. And yeah, it was super cool to reacquaint with you. And yeah, I look forward to doing it again.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to enjoying more of this freedom we've got in New Zealand. For everyone listening in New Zealand, you have no idea how lucky you are. I got out of managed isolation early January, and just the sense of freedom that you've got here is uncanny. It's nice coming this way. I'm a little bit nervous about going back the other way. We probably would have got into a sense of freedom, and my 4-year-old would be running up and hugging every kid down the street without a mask on, which might get us in a little bit of trouble. But it's great to be here, and looking forward to the borders opening back up so there can be more travel between the US here and other markets around the world. So
awesome. Keep
it up, New Zealand. You're doing a good job. I'm bearing the fruits of all the great work that you've done. So thanks a lot.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.